Okay, so let's go ahead and make a jump pad. Jump pads are fun and they have to be built a very specific way. So to start, again, let's create a layer, jump pads. Jump pad is comprised of multiple parts: the jump pad entity, position target, the particle effect, the light, and the mesh for the actual jump pad itself. Let's first start off by placing a mesh. Now through the asset sets we have the Cavasar for Cillian and Atavirta. There's 3 different jump pad assets made, as well as 2 that are directional based. So if you're shooting players really far horizontally, instead of popping them up vertically, there's assets for those as well. So a quick way to do it is click in the brushes, the roll up bar. So I'm going to go filter and just type in jump, and you'll see a bunch of different things listed here. Let's go ahead and just drop in this for Cillian 4_jump pad. Drag it from the list, come into the game world, click, and then Control Shift click where you want it to be. That looks like that put in the horizontal one. So if I want to change this, I can easily still have the brush selected, scroll down, and you'll see this brush is filled. This way I can easily just click jump pad and it'll change them here. You can easily, if you're just browsing through brushes, use your arrow keys and just pop up and it'll just start cycling in all these things. So let's place this jump pad mesh close to the wall. Okay, now that I have the mesh there, let's make it come to life. We'll scroll back up here on the roll-up bar in the Objects tab, click Entity, then Filter again. It's usually the easiest way to do it. Type in jump pad or jump or whatever, and select and drag, click it, and using the Shift method, hold Shift and make sure you're placing this right dead center on top of this jump pad mesh. Okay. Jump pad entity, you can, I don't know how well this is going to appear in this video, but you can faintly see a little box here. And you can see it's pretty large. And want this area that's this like transparent box, that's representing what the player touches in order for them to actually use the jump pad itself. So you can make this any size you want, but we want it to fit in nice and snug within the jump pad mesh itself so players aren't accidentally flying all over the place. In this particular case, and there's a lot of area boxes that are like this, you'll see in the entity properties the first 3 fields, box X, box Y, box Z. This lets you set the dimensions coming from the origin point, which is the center of this entity. Okay, so box X, let's set that to 2.5. Box Y, 2.5. Now you can see it's still poking outside the mesh, so let's go ahead and make that a little bit smaller. 1.5 and 1.5. That should do the trick. Now you can see that if it's a box, it's not going to match this cylinder perfectly. But that's a good enough fill in the space. I know it's hard to see in this video, but it's filling in this cylindrical space very well, and the player will definitely know that when they hit this mesh, they're going to jump, and it's probably going to hit them. So let's make the height just a little bit smaller. Let's do this as like a 3. Let's move it down just a little bit. You don't want it sticking too high above it, because there's going to be instances where if a player's like trying to jump over it, or so many other different cases, and you don't want them just shooting off of that thing like crazy. Okay, so that's the second part of creating a jump pad. Now let's click. Let's make an entity that's going to say, hey, this is the direction and the speed amount you're going to push the player whenever they hit it. What you want to use for this is what's called a position target. So just type POS and you'll see POS target. Drag it from the menu, click Shift. Let's get that dead center and let's lift it straight up. Now I want the player to get up here on top of the roof of this little mesh. Now, in its current state, you can tell what's going to happen is it's going to jump the player, and the player is going to go all the way up to this point, What's going to happen is, as the player's getting up to this point though, they're going to start slowing down and dampening. So as soon as they get to this top point, they're going to pretty much not be getting any more velocity from this jump pad. So always make sure that you're giving it enough room. For example, this down here will definitely not make the player get on top of that roof. So let's pop it up high enough so the player will definitely get up there. Let's just move it a little bit on the Y just to give the player some influence on the direction to get up on the roof. And if I wanted to make sure that the player always got on the roof, and then, as you may well know, in Nexuiz we allow players to have a lot of air control. You want to make sure that you click this in the jump pad. You're going to click this lock movement, and what lock movement does, it's going to force the player restricted to the path until they meet the position target. That's really useful in certain maps where you have a really long jump pad that's flying across the map with a lot of hazards below them. And we found during play sessions that not having that feature, players were constantly falling off the maps. It's more so in the case when the out of ear maps. Okay, so now that I have the position target, I need to make sure these things are linked. So this part's very important. What you want to use is a link tool up here in the top left. When you have this selected, you must go from the position target to the jump pad. You can't be jump pad to the position target. It's very specific on that. To link these, one easy way to do this is to hold space. When you hold space, these little square icons appear in the objects. Those are called advanced selection. So what you want to do is keep holding space, hover over the position target, and you can tell you're over it when your cursor changes. It's a little plus sign. Click and drag until your cursor changes when it's over jump pad 1. And you can see when I'm over it, you'll see there's a little name that appeared. Let go of the left mouse button when you're over it, and you now have these linked. Press escape and you'll get out of link mode. So now these jump pads are now linked, and you always want to be able to, you can verify that they're going to work properly by looking at this gradient line that's going from the jump pad to the position target. Now you always want to make sure that the position target, it's going from dark blue to turquoise. The next part is we want to place a particle effect at this jump pad. Particle effects is really useful because it's going to get the player's attention in the environment, and you want the player to note and always be aware that there's a jump pad. That way, whenever Nexuiz in a speed that Nexuiz is, a lot of the times the player's so frantically moving across the environment, you want to make this thing pop out. So go to View, Open View pane, and go back into the database view. Now in the Particles tab, you want to load library and choose cav_env_fx. Once you have that open, expand the gameplay section and just choose this jump pad one on the top. Make sure you just have it selected. Simply drag it like you do everything else into the environment. Control Shift click right in the center. Again, using Shift space, you can get rid of the icons to make sure everything's looking right. There you have the particle effect for the jump pad. Okay, so now you want to place a light around this too, just to signal the player so they see the difference whenever they're running around. They see this light pulsing. So let's close that and place a light right on top of it. Once you have the light placed, just move it a little bit above the mesh. Let's choose it a little golden color. There we go. Now you want to go down here into Style, expand this style down here in the Properties, and Light Style is going to animate it slightly. And what you want to do for jump pad is something like 28, and that's going to pulse the light. Let's crank up the diffuse multiplier to 15, and that way it stands out a lot in the environment. Again, press Shift space, and now you can see what it looks like in game. Now that we have this created, let's put one on the other side too. So just select all the entities, the XY axis constraints, copy it over. And then making sure when you rotate it, make sure you're not local, and rotate it around 180 degrees. And there you have it. You have 2 jump pads in your environment.